Hi guys, hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we will develop a registration form using JavaFX, and then we will use this registration form to accept an input from the user and insert the data into the database. So some of the information is very similar to the examples that we have done in the past. For example, line number 19, 20, and 21 will going to stay the same. Here we will going to be establishing our database connection URL, and we have our username and password set to nothing because for this particular database I do not have any username and password set up. But if you do, you will going to put that username and password over here, or you can accept it from the user. Then we have my connection object and my statement object, some variables which I'm using to accept an input from the user and storing the values in these variables, and then we're going to be going from that route. But anyway, the new thing that we'll be introducing here will be our JavaFX environment. For that reason, as you can see on line number 18, my class is a child of application. And that's how you build your graphical user interface in the JavaFX environment. Now, inside the application, I have to override the start method, and that's where I write my entire logic, what would go onto my JavaFX form. Now, in the main method, we need a launch method call, which basically makes a call to the start method, which is overridden method, and then that's how things start getting into the environment, and you can see your form. But the launch method is from the main, and that's the only thing that you got to do in the main. Then inside the JavaFX environment, as we have learned in the prior tutorials, that inside a JavaFX application, you need to have what we call a stage. And stage basically holds a scene, and scene holds your entire environment, which could be in any kind of a pane that you may have. So here we have my primary stage object, which is the name of my object that is coming into my start method. I have a stage object called primary stage. Now this stage object gets passed to it when a launch makes a call to start, and that's a built-in functionality right within the application class. It throws an exception for any kind of problem that goes through the process. Now the primary stage object requires a scene object, and that's exactly what we have down below here. We have a scene object on line number 93. This is the size of my scene or the size of my canvas, and it takes in a pane object, which I'll talk about in this tutorial. And then we have a title of our form. We are setting the scene to be the scene of the stage, and then we are making it not resizable, and then we are showing it. For anybody who is seeing this for the first time and you're more familiar with Swing, I would highly recommend that you go over my JavaFX tutorials where we go into all of these things in a great detail. But I'm just sort of kind of rushing through this right now because our emphasis is database and not the going over how to build a JavaFX form. But I'm just recalling it for anybody who's seeing it after some time. Anyway, inside my start method on line number 29, I create my border pane. Now, border pane is a kind of a pane, which is like a border layout from a Swing environment with the 5 regions. And I'm only planning on using one of the regions, center region. And one of the reasons I did this example this way, it could have been done in different ways, is to show you, again, how you can do nested layouts. On line number 30, I have my grid pane layout. This is the layout in which I'm going to be building my form. And lines 31 and 32, you can see that I'm giving horizontal gap and a vertical gap. Lines 34 through 43, that's where I'm building my objects, which I will use in my environment. Anybody, again, coming from the Swing environment will notice that we use JLabel, but in the AWT environment, we used to use label. So application, which is a child of JavaFX, which is a class in the JavaFX environment, it basically has its own architecture and it's not built on the Swing architecture. So again, you will see a lot of the things that you once saw in AWT many years ago. So we have label to create a label. We have a text field to create a text box or a text field. And then we have a button, as you can see on line 43, to create a button. So these are my objects that I'm going to be using on Canvas. Now, I need to add these. So what we'll do is, as you can see on lines 46 through 54, we're adding these. Now, when you add these items, they go in the name of the object that needs to go on the scene in the pane is added to the pane, followed by the column number and the row number. So the first column is 0 and the second column is 1. Similarly, the first row is 0. So as you're familiar with arrays, the first placeholder is always 0 by index. So here we have in the first column, first row, we have a label. In the second column of the first row, I have the text box. And it goes exactly like that. I build my interface. Let me show you how it looks like before we get going. And this is basically how things look like. This is the title of my stage. And then these are my items that I'm adding right here. So as you can see, the labels, which are all in the first column. And if you look at lines 46, 48, 50, 52, you will see then that's how they are. One of the advantages is on line number 54, I only have one object to go in that one line, and I can literally say that I want this object to be in the second column of the fifth row. So I don't have to have every column filled in a row. So that's how the button appears in the second column. So I can do something like that. Now let's go inside the button, what exactly we're doing here. And again, I would highly recommend you go over the Java FX tutorials if you do not understand line 56 onwards. But in short, we have a set on action, which is a built-in function which allows my button to respond to an event. So now I'm calling the event handler class, and action event is a class which will going to handle this kind of an event. I could very well use lambda expressions here. I didn't do it in this example. Again, for the sake of those people who are not familiar with lambda expressions, which would allow me to minimize this code by a few lines. Again, you can go over the lambda expression tutorials if you want to see how lambda expressions are used. On line 60, 61, 62, 63, I'm reading the input from the user into my variable. So these are the names of my text boxes, as you can see. And the first three text boxes, since my information will be going into the database as text, I'm just reading it as a text in my string objects. Line number 63, in my database, salary is a numeric value. So I'm taking my string value, parsing it into a double value, and then storing it in the double variable. So salary is a variable of type double. Once I do that, if you are looking at the try block, and if you have seen the previous tutorials I did with JDBC, you will know exactly what this code does. I'm loading my class on line 66, which will serve as my driver. Then on line 68, I'm establishing connection. Line number 71, I'm running my SQL statement. Creating my SQL statement object. And line 73 through 78, I am creating my insert statement. So as you can see, insert into employees, that's the name of my table, values, and then in the single quotes, I have the variables, which are string, and then the salary is without any single quotes. Now, this is a typical SQL statement. In generally, if you are familiar with SQL, you write your values that are text or date in single quotes. Every value is separated by a comma, and that's what you see right here. And then there's no comma after the last field. Numeric values are not enclosed in any single quotes. So this SQL statement pretty much allows me to create something that would go perfectly fine in my data set. Now coming down on line number 81, I'm executing update. Now execute query is a method that you would use with a select command. So if you're using a select command, you will call execute query, and then you will store the result in a result set, something we went over in our previous examples. I will highly recommend you go over those if you want to see how they are, in case you are seeing this example for the first time on our channel. Now, also, if you want to run insert, alter, create, drop, update, delete, in all of those cases, you will use execute update. So line number 81 pretty much shows you that you can run an execute update, and this allows you to run the SQL statement, and then a record will be inserted. Now, one of the tutorials I did in the JDBC tutorial set, which shows you how you can check to see if a record was inserted or deleted or updated, I would highly recommend you go over that tutorial to see how you can check to see if the record actually went through or was updated or deleted. So anyway, and this is basically what this example does. Let's run it real quick and check to see if the data actually went through into our database. So I will going to bring up our form here. I'm going to put some employee information here. And now let me click insert record. Okay. Now once I click on insert record, it's this very simple application. It gives you an output down below here that says one record inserted successfully. That came from line number 82. So let's double check on our database. And we're going to then check our employees table and to make sure that the employee actually went through. So I'm opening my employees table, and here I have 1011 Sam Green, manager, 78,078 cents. So this is a very short, brief example to show you how you can build a form which would allow you to throw the data from a JavaFX interface into the database. And you can use something very similar to this with any database. The code will not change. The only thing that you may have to change is the driver and how you access the path, and that's about it. The rest of the logic will stay the same. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and stay tuned for more such cool tutorials in Java development environment. Have a great day. Bye-bye.